Fran, 5, 4, 3.
Hello, and welcome to Toastmasters in the Community. I'm your host, Fran Okeson, and we have a wonderful show planned for you today. Today we're taping on April Fool's Day, and we all know what that means. A lot of strange things can happen on April Fool's Day. I have a very small group here today. I guess people are out trying to pull pranks on their friends. However, we've got a very good show, so let's just move on. With us today is a gentleman who was on our show last month when Gregory Prillo was on. Of course, he looks a little bit different today. I'd like to introduce everyone again to Jerry Greyhawk, a member of the Red Storm Drum and Dance Troupe, who live on Staten Island. So, Jerry, you look a lot different than you did last month. I'm so used to you coming on with your red Native American jacket, your Indian jacket. But this is, I'm glad they all took pictures of you because I got to go home and study you. But
I'm glad you like it. I really am.
I do, and I'm giving you my spot as the first speaker today because I can't wait to hear your take on the April Fool Day idea in your culture. So Jerry is talking. We're not evaluating his speech, but at the end of the show, instead of our usual table topics, my people will come up and ask Jerry a question based on his presentation of Indian folklore as far as this goes. And his speech is titled, Heyoka, Fool Soldiers. Let's all welcome Jerry Greyhawk.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, the word Heyoka in the Lakota language means clown. And to many Native American tribes and nations across the United States and in Canada and Mexico, the clown is not only someone who is about humor, and it's not your typical clown attitude towards where it's just being funny and watching antics and watching humor. We can be humorous, and that's one part of the aspect of our teaching. To many people across Indian country, clowns are very sacred, and they're held in high regard. The Heyoka, which is the one I'm representing today, is basically blessed by what they call the Wakinyan, the thunder beings. And the thunder beings are what give them the power to actually mirror a person or mirror many, many people as far as their flaws in, say, their lives, say, their attitude and the way they're acting and thinking in their moral structure. They do this by actually doing the exact opposite and being excessive, sometimes being profane, sometimes being extremely brash, rude, to show people that that's not the way to live. And in doing so, through their antics, through their humor, people tend to see that themselves in their antics, and it makes them think about who they are as a person and their standing in their world, among their nation, among their people, basically teaching the rules by breaking the rules. It's a very contrary way of living. Many people, of course, have some preconceptions of the sacred Heyoka, the clown, depending on where they're from, the Koshari in the Southwest, the Chagnizi, the Cheyenne Crazy Dog societies. There's many societies across our Native American world that actually reflect on a person by mirroring the opposite of what they actually are. It reminds good people, it reminds people who believe that they are perfect, that they're not perfect. And it also reminds those that are flawed that they can change and become a positive influence on the people. And they were also used, of course, in times of despair, when things were going wrong within the tribe and the people. Their antics would make them laugh and make them actually take away their preoccupation, their troubles, even if it was for a little while, so that they themselves can ease their minds. On the opposite side of the coin, Heyoka were also fierce warriors, in which they were expected to be very brave, recklessly brave in battle, to the point where they were usually the ones out front doing some of the major fighting. In many of the societies, the clown was also used, of course, to teach children. And the fear of clowns, which a lot of people have, goes back a long, long ways, because among our people, especially like the Apache and the Cherokee, the boogers and the clown that's in the sacred dances, also is taught to children to say that if you don't behave, the clowns will come and take you away. They were given the idea that they were actually cannibals, in a sense. So in kind of a way, they made them, you can watch their antics, but don't act like them, because they're the ones that teach us how not to act. Black and white, What I wear here, the polka dots, represent the hail spots, which is a very powerful, powerful symbol among many heyoka. It also represents, the black and white represents the duality of people, the light and dark side of man, of humanity. I have a lightning bolt on one side of my face, the lightning bolt being the symbol of the thunder beings as well. Those are the ones that gave the heyoka their vision to become a heyoka. A heyoka is not chosen. A heyoka is chosen by the spirits, not chosen by the people. When a person gets a vision about becoming a heyoka, then they have to live that contrary lifestyle. It might sound very humorous to a lot of people, but a lot of things are done by the heyoka to basically differentiate them from other people among the nations. They would do things like walk backwards. They would talk backwards. They would say good evening instead of good morning when it was daytime out. They would shiver in intense heat. They would sweat in freezing cold. They wouldn't wear shoes. They would ride their horses backwards. Things like that to kind of assess the humor behind the contrary and mirroring everyone else. They were also known to hold special powers, like during kettle ceremonies. They actually were able to reach into a boiling kettle and reach out and grab food to eat without being burned. This was something that, of course, was something that we looked upon as being very, very sacred. And even though through their excesses and through their brashness, we learned also the basic rules of how to be as a person. They were allowed, above anyone else, to question the norm. They were allowed to question why things go a certain way. They were also allowed to question anything wrong. They were kind of a speaker for the people. They'd say things that no one else would say or were afraid to say because they themselves had the power to do so and the authority and the right to do so. And their approach wasn't always bold. Sometimes it was in a very shy, subtle nature that they did these things, and very mischievous ways. Of course, things that were brought to people's attention about how a person made a certain decision and how they felt everybody was too afraid to question it. So they were the ones who stepped in and said, why did you do certain things? And you wear certain symbols, of course, to besides the black and white, you wear certain symbols to differentiate yourself. Now, in keeping with true heyoka, I didn't wear horns on my head, which is usually how they are represented. So I have a horned rattle that was used in dance. And the raven feathers, of course, that are hanging from here. The raven is a very sacred bird to many native peoples, in the sense that we believe that that bird is the one that travels between both worlds. And raven is also a trickster spirit. And at one time it was a white bird with a beautiful voice. And because he stole a piece of the sun to bring back fire to mankind, he was punished. And because he is escaping the sun, he was burnt black and his voice was taken away, which is why he has that raspy caw when he calls out in our legends. Another popular, very, very popular mythological folkloric trickster is the coyote. I brought this coyote pelt here to just a representation of him. Couldn't bring a real coyote in the studio. It would be they want to get paid scale. So, you know, and the coyote is very popular among many southwestern tribes and many tribes along the Great Plains area as being a trickster. And they call the ma'i, the bashutsi shukmanitu. And he is the one that also, through his mischief, through his antics, in many, many, many stories, we are taught what not to do. He has a special place in Creator's heart, because Creator, too, has a sense of humor as well. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, many times, Coyote has gotten himself into fixes where he has actually lost his life. But he was always brought back. He was always brought back so that he could learn from his mistakes and continue to teach mankind about their flaws and their differences. And even though many people consider it a negative influence, he's still very much respected because of the duality and the special powers he was given to teach us. And of course, the trickster spider, Iktomi, among the Lakota people, the spider was also a trickster. And he and Coyote sometimes would get together and perform different antics in order to show people again what not to do. Coyote is also credited for bringing the buffalo to the people, because he was the one who went into the spirit's house and released the buffalo from their pens and brought them down. So many things like that we credit Coyote for, that we have, what we live by. Also, of course, a lot of the bad things and mischievous things that are done. And a very humorous animal. Even if you watch it in nature, it's always looks like it's up to no good. But whenever we see one, especially walking across our path, we always say a silent prayer and thank him for his teachings. It's the way of our people. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of different nations have the clowns, the koshari, which are the Hopi clowns. They were the ones who were credited with bringing us those, the look of the party hat, the dunce cap, which is like a conical shaped hat. They were the ones that began to wear it. And also black and white has also been a huge thing. The hail spots, many of them would paint themselves with stripes, kind of like prison stripes, in order to represent the skeleton of a man. So that it was like, the symbolism of that was turning a man inside out to see his inner self and to be able to see your inner self as well. And because they were allowed to do that, they were allowed to be brash, they were allowed to be bold in their statements and in their questioning and in their excesses in order for people to learn from them. And not only were they something to admire and to be amused by, they were also to be feared because they did have a special power from the Wakinyan, the thunder beings, to enact an influence and highly influence a person. We also believe that they were also able to really look into a person's soul, and that's how they would get what we would call their material for what they would use. And it was amazing, the power that they had as empaths and people who could read other people's emotions and feelings and thoughts and actually teach them how to be better within themselves by mimicking and mirroring those negative aspects of that person's soul and that person's being. And in that way, we hold the clown very, very, very sacred. In order to be members of a Fool Society or a Heyoka Society, you have to have a vision. It's not something that comes to you and you just decide to become a Heyoka, a clown. You have to have received a vision, and the people have had to recognize it in order for them to consider you and respect you for the person that you are as a clown, the sacred clown. Now, many of them, like I said, it was the very contrary lifestyle. It was, many wore women's clothing, which was quite acceptable. It was told that they have very, very heavy medicine. And the term Witko, which in the Lakota language means enchanted, grossly misinterpreted later on to mean crazy. Like the great Oglala warrior, Crazy Horse, was a Heyoka, a thunder being. And his name in Lakota is Tashunka Witko, which literally translated means his horse is enchanted, but they misinterpreted it to mean his horse is crazy. So they called him Crazy Horse.
Oh, gee.
All right. And many times the term Witko is used to describe a person who, according to modern, era today, would be considered crazy. But to be Witko among these people was not an illness of any kind. It was a power that was given to you. And you learned from their mistakes and their flaws. It was kind of a, how would you call it, crazy wisdom, as many people call it. It was a very fragmented way of learning, but because of their lifestyle and what they've chosen to do, it was something that was quite normal to them. And they were able to live their life that way and be the contrary, be the humor, be the teacher, the trickster. And many people held them in very, very high regard. But on the other hand, many people reviled them because they were not very much accepting of their antics. Because they believed that, of course, if they were being affected negatively and weren't learning from what was happening, they in turn had a negative effect towards them. And many times a Heyoka, being the empath that he is, would steer away from that. And we used the term fool soldier a little while ago. That term was coined back in 1862 after a group of women and children were actually captured by the Dakota during the Battle of Lake Chetek in Minnesota. And there was a group of young Lakota men called the Fool Soldiers who actually formed a society just a couple of years before this incident. And what happened, they volunteered to go and get these women and children back. But their way of doing so was not the normal warrior way of doing things. They preached nonviolence. And they thought through nonviolent means that they were able to get those women and children back. So they went And it was, it was a very arduous trip to find the camp. And they brought many, many things with them, many gifts to trade for these people's lives. And after many days of negotiation, they finally agreed. But in doing so, they lost a lot of their supplies and things that they brought with them because they just kept sweetening the pot, so to speak, in order to get them back. And on their way, they only had one horse. And mind you, there was more than 20 people on this journey between the captives and the warriors. And on the way, they just kept trading places in order to get there. They finally traded for a wagon, but it was too heavy for the horse to pull. So these men took turns pulling this wagon all the way to the fort. When they got to the fort, they were not treated as heroes by either side. As a matter of fact, their own people mockingly called them fool soldiers because they went against the normal warrior way of doing things, which was a very violent, very bloody way. And the soldiers, of course, being who they are at the time, always switching loyalties and dividing loyalties, didn't consider them human at all, so they were imprisoned. They were imprisoned for many months. 2 of the fool soldiers passed away while they were imprisoned. And when they were finally released, they weren't treated very well by their own people because of the way they went about things. So sometimes you take on a certain lifestyle, especially a very contrary lifestyle, and it comes with a huge cost. But if it's something that you feel in your spirit that calls you, then you continue to do so, even though you lose friends. Some even lost family members because they were ashamed. But they themselves were not ashamed, so they felt they were doing nothing wrong. Modern day Heyoka, they do exist. They are alive and well today. Many of the societies, like the Heyoka of the Lakota, the Koshare, the Boogers from the Cherokee Nation are still alive. The Fool Soldiers, of course, are still very much active today in Santee. And they do live that contrary lifestyle. When they get together, they flourish in that. And when they're among other people, you can usually tell the Heyoka, the clown, by the way they dress. Many times it's black and white, the way I'm dressed today. They will wear the black and white polka dot or the lightning strikes or the face paint in order to differentiate themselves from everyone else. Even if it's a very subtle way, some of them will do it in a very brash way, kind of like I do with a lot, and others will do it very subtly, like they'll wear just maybe the bandana, or they'll just paint their faces black and white when they dance so that people can tell that's Heyoka. Sometimes when you see them dancing, they will dance counterclockwise as everyone else is dancing clockwise. They'll dance backwards when everybody else is dancing in forward manner. In many ways, they show that they are proud Heyoka, they are proud sacred clowns. And in the lessons that were learned by them is how we kind of try to mimic our lives. Because it can't be without humor. We have to be able to face our realities head on, not try to hide behind them or try to mask them or try to be like something else. That's what the Heyoka teaches us, teach you to be yourself and honor and respect the fact that you are flawed and you are a fragmented person, and to be able to put those pieces together in your life and make them fit and work for you, you have to acknowledge them and you have to basically face it. That's one of the real lessons that they taught. Many of them would teach you to mirror someone in their nation who is of high regard. Even if it means following them around, there was nothing absolutely wrong with mimicking a person's speech, their mannerisms. If it was a positive influence on your life, it wasn't mockery in any sense, according to Heyoka. It was a severe form of flattery, admiration, and also you felt your spirit enriched by being around that person. And it wasn't acting like them, it was more bring their good qualities into yourself, kind of like the way we do with any teachings today. People come, they hear people speak, they learn from them, they take into heart what's said, and they take whatever works for them and what's useful to their lives, and they manifest it into their physical being, which is the lesson that the Heyoka gives us, of course, through humor as well. Never forget to laugh. Never forget.
You know, I'm sitting here trying to hold back my laughter because I almost...
You can laugh, you sure?
No. I almost wore a white jacket today.
Did you?
With the black, I figured, it just caught me just toward the end of your speech. If I had gone with the white today, It would have looked like we were in cohorts.
It would have been.
That would have been
Did
funny.
Did you guys talk before coming here?
I'm glad I didn't. I just thought it was too soon in the spring to wear white, but I almost did. Oh, I'll have to watch you when you come back, and maybe we'll have to have a confab. That was very, very interesting. May I just hold the
rattle?
The rattle?
Of course.
Is, is it very heavy?
No, it's light.
Oh,
it's very light.
It's very light.
Yes.
Oh. That's very interesting. Jerry, I want to thank you very, very much.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
We're going to have you. We're going to have you back again. Believe me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just glad that comes off.
Well, one thing, this necklace I wear, we call it the sacred turkey medicine, and of course, it's not without its humor.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
Don't you? We had a couple of our crew back there who will enjoy that tremendously. Well, I have a question ready for you anyway, and I hope our table topic people. Well, at the end, I'll see what our table topic people come up with. But I caught a couple of things that interested me. All right, and now I'll take my turn as the second speaker today. My name is Fran Okeson. Okay, and I'm doing speech number 8 from the basic manual, Getting Comfortable with Visual Aids. And as I looked at the monitor up there, I realized how odd this is to see antique figurines and your coyote at the same table here. And I figured people are probably going to tune in late and say, what on earth is going on there? But anyway, that's wonderful. I feel so sorry for him, though. I hope I'm an animal lover.
Oh, so am I.
Well,
so am I. But it's part of our culture to use pelts and hides. And with us, it's more not just something that we look at and touch and admire, but we also honor the spirit of the animal that gave its life, so that we can have something to keep us warm, something to eat, as well. And of course, being a representation of the coyote, like I said, it's hard to drag a real coyote into the studio. But
I'd probably want to pat him. Well, that's why Greg Trillo, when he painted that big buffalo, he said the buffalo saved the Indians.
Yes, yes, they did.
Well, I won't even go for what.
Well, as the legend goes, it was Coyote who brought the buffalo to the people.
I heard you say
and,
that.
And because they were starving. And
I think Greg will enjoy seeing this tape very, very much. Okay, thank you very much, Jerry. And we'll have you back often. You're going to be part of my crew from now on, so I think we'll learn a lot more of what you have in your tribe and in your nation, and I think that'll be like a history lesson every time you come on.
Sounds like
you can talk about other things, though.
Sure. No, it sounds great. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, so Lucy Kahn is my evaluator, and I've named this just in the nick of time. And people are probably going to wonder, what is she doing with those figurines? Well, let me tell you, folks. I got married in 1960, and a few years later was 1963, and does anyone, well, I guess nobody in this room would remember what happened in 1963, but this month is the 54th anniversary of Black Saturday on Staten Island. My husband works at S.S. White's dental manufacturing company, and as I said, I was a new bride, 3 years into my marriage, barely, and one day my husband called in the morning, and he said, "Hey, babe, have you looked out the kitchen window yet?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you better go out there," he said, "and then pack something and get in the car and go someplace." He said, "Because there's a fire coming right our way." I looked out the window, and the sky was getting black, and the wind was blowing up, and this cloud was ominous. So I got some things together. I didn't have my foster children until a couple of years later. I didn't have any animals, so it was just getting some stuff for my husband and for me, got it in the car. And I did call my girlfriend Shirley from Eltingville because I didn't know where this fire was coming. He just said it was coming toward Tottenville. So Shirley said, "Well, come on over here." She said, "We've heard about it, but we don't see anything yet." So I got in the car, and Eltingville, Shirley was about 15, 20 minutes away from me. And as I got nearer to her house, fire trucks were going all over the place. It was a brush fire like we've never seen before on Staten Island. As I got to Shirley's street to turn down, whatever the grocery store or supermarket, fire trucks were in there, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I found out later that there was no pressure in the hoses. The fire was so disastrous. It started in Rossville, and then it came to Tottenville, and then it went over here to Mariners Harbor. It jumped from field to field. Don't forget, we didn't have the amount of houses on Staten Island back in the 60s as we have now. It was a lot of brush and just vacant property. So I was surprised when I realized that it came as far as Mariners Harbor. All right, what happened was, in the history, of course, you can find this online, 100 houses were lost. What did it say now? More than 500 people were homeless. I spent the whole day in Eltingville until my husband got off from work about 4:30, and he let me know that he was safe to come home. But let me tell you something, what happened. The story went, and it's true, the fire it didn't go past Mount Loretta along Highland Boulevard. People on Staten Island know where Mount Loretta is. All right? It came toward the conference house, toward my end of the island. It came right to where Greg lives, Greg Perillo lives, okay? And on Page Avenue, which on one side was just brush, the other side were homes. Ellen's florist was there, friends of mine. What the story was afterwards, that when the people saw the fire coming up along Highland Boulevard and then blowing up Page Avenue, they took their treasures out of the houses because the fire was on their side of the street, not on the brush side, but on the side with the houses. Our insurance man lived down right around Page and Highland Boulevard. They took TVs, they took things that they wanted to preserve and carried them across the street and put them at the curb. No sidewalks in those days on Page Avenue. What happened, why I'm using this for an April Fool's joke, the outcome was that the wind blew again, and it took all of those things that the people had carried across the street. The houses were saved, but they lost everything they had put there to save. And what happened was, there was in Annandale, there was a woman, Ginny Sloan, who had an antique store, and I used to love to walk in there and look at things I couldn't afford to buy. But when I saw this young man and this young lady, I just figured, I said to Ginny, how much are they? I don't remember. I don't remember things that I don't want to remember. I'm good at remembering things I want to remember. But Ginny gave me a price that was, I figured my husband only worked at the dental factory, all right? So this wasn't in his budget. But she said, well, if you like them, why don't you put the deposit down and pay it off? That was a good idea. So I gave her $10 out of each paycheck. And I don't know how many paychecks I went down, but religiously, I pay my bills. I gave her the money, and I picked up these figurines 3 days before the fire, and it went all over that end of the island. I would never have had them. So I have these in a special place in one of my china closets, and I'm hoping that Isaac is getting a very close-up of my figurines. I don't know where they came from. I don't know who gave them to the antique store, but I'm forever grateful that my husband warned me and the fire didn't come as far as my house. April Fool, we don't know, but you know, you should be prepared for the unpreparedness or whatever you want to call it. Always be prepared to make a quick exit. But that's my April Fool's story. And aren't they beautiful?
They are.
Yeah.
They are very beautiful.
Yeah. You never know. Never know. That's why I say nobody touch this box. I have them in a special box. Everybody's walking around me like they don't want to even be in breathing space of them. But anyway. Okay, so let's move on. See, Sue, you're up here already. Oh, Sue, I like your title. And it's a good thing I checked my notes again today because I had everything put in here except I was going over just to make sure everything was right, and I had forgotten to change your title here, and I was, Sue Brooks, this is an act suffix. Oh, good Lord, and with the white out. So, Sue, you're doing speech number 6, vocal variety, and that's why I left Paul's title in because that's what he did last month. And Alex Voiland is your evaluator. You have 5 minutes, and your title is The April Fool. Let's all welcome Sue Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Audience here in the studio and audience at home. I am the April Fool. Let me explain. A few years ago, I was attending a club meeting at Dialogue Party Toastmasters in Somerset. I had served a successful term as a club mentor, and part of the members of the club had been experienced Toastmasters, and part of the group were brand new Toastmasters. We were always interested in trying new things. Much to my surprise, I walked into a meeting. I was the only speaker on the agenda. The Toastmaster announced, "Tonight, we will be having a backwards meeting." A backwards meeting? I had heard about these backwards meetings in the past, But in my 15 years as a Toastmaster, I had never experienced a backwards meeting. Oh no. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have never experienced a backwards meeting, here's what happens. You start at the bottom of the agenda and you work your way up. You open the meeting saying, "Thank you for coming." You give fake evaluations, fake timer reports. You have table topics. And then after it gets close to an hour, then you have your speeches. You conclude by saying, "Welcome." Wow. Here I was, an experienced Toastmaster, and I was the April Fool because the joke was on me. Sure, the joke was on everybody else in the club meeting, but I guess they were getting into it. I was getting all nervous and excited and feeling weird and strange. Take a deep breath, Sue. It's okay. You can do this. Instead of relaxing and enjoying the meeting and seeing the humor and the antics and the funny things, as Jerry talked about earlier with the backwards. Instead of relaxing and enjoying it, I was the April Fool. I was nervous and tense and scared. Okay, how am I going to do this speech? Okay, table topics. Come on, get over it, get over it. Well, when my evaluator gave me my fake evaluation, I was thinking, do I incorporate those things that she said I did into my speech, or am I supposed to give my speech anyway? Okay, Sue, you could do this, you could do this. And then I realized during the course of the meeting, it's okay, relax. It's not about you. It's about what value you could bring to your audience. Relax, enjoy it. Try to just get through the meeting, listen to what everybody else is saying. It's okay. They might be feeling as weird and strange as you are. Well, finally it came to the point in the meeting where I was about to give my speech. I did pretty well. I think I may have even tried to incorporate some of those suggestions that my evaluator gave to me. I delivered my speech, and then after the meeting, my evaluator met with me separately and gave me a real evaluation on how I actually delivered. It was all okay, and what I got out of the whole experience was that indeed, it is okay to spring a surprise on everybody, to enjoy a backwards meeting, even though it was a couple of weeks after April Fools had taken place. What I got out of the meeting, ladies and gentlemen, was that it's okay to even announce a backwards meeting, to put it on the agenda. You will have a backwards meeting. This way everybody can prepare. So again, ladies and gentlemen, April Fools, I am the April Fool, but have a backwards meeting, relax, and deliver something of value to your audience. Madam Toastmaster.
Sue, while I have you there, I have the outline for a backwards meeting, but we don't have enough people to make it go. How about doing that after July 1st for a high-performance leadership project? You can work with whoever we know will be coming on one of those months, and you can work that out. Would you like that?
Sure. We'll talk about it later off screen. Thank you,
Oh,
Fran.
we're not talking about it now, no.
Of course not. Thank you very much.
No, it's wild because you give, it's just nutty. Oh, we have from a short little lady to a big tall guy. Hello, Kevin. Who's manning that camera? Oh, Paul. Okay. All right. All right, our next speaker, in fact, our last speech maker today is Kevin Thompson. And Kevin, you're doing speech number 2 in the old manual, Speak with Sincerity. One of these days you'll get into the new swing before the new Pathways program comes and everything changes. Then you'll have to get up with the new things. You have 5 minutes, Kevin, and your evaluator is our Division F Director, Emily Voiland. And I like your title, The Biggest Fool Ever. I don't know if that means your height or that you're just a big fool, but we'll all find out. Let's all welcome Kevin Thompson.
Fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests here in the studio and also at home. And I know, Fran, you're hoping that I'm not talking about you. I would never do that because that would be mean.
And you're afraid of my son in the control room.
No, I'm not afraid of him. I can run faster than he can. And you as well, Fran, so I'm not afraid of either of you. So But I want to focus on that whole idea of being mean, because that's, I think, the real hidden aspect of April Fool. Now, as a young boy, it was fun. You know, you run up to somebody and you tell them something, April Fool, April Fool. But what's happened over time is that the joy and fun that you got out of sharing, being part of an April Fool's joke has turned to meanness, to hatred. And I'm so glad that we had the introduction in today's meeting about the Heyoka, because the idea of that clown showing you what you're not supposed to do, I believe is what really the whole idea of April Fool should be about. But what's happened over time is that we've gone from being a culture of love and happiness to a culture of reality and hate. And so with that, running into the idea of April Fool, it's kind of sad to me. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. So if you're a sci-fi buff like me, there is a movie out there that is that Sylvester Stallone was in, and it was Dredd. The president at that time in the movie is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they reflect back to Arnold being president. Now you said, can Arnold Schwarzenegger be president? April Fool. But if I were to tell you, if we would go back, let's say 10 years, that's not too far. And if I were to tell you then that we could have a person that never held any type of political office, that had a whole lot of money and was a great business person to become president, you'd have thought I was playing the April Fool's joke on you. Is that really April Fool's? 10 years ago, you would have thought that would have been the case. If I were to tell you that you could have a health care bill that is called the Affordable Health Care Act, and people would embrace that, but if you just change the name to Obamacare, that people would be against that. Just because it was named or coined after the president, that's not really the name of the bill, but would you believe that that was an April Fool? So what's happening in our country is that because of this mindset of hate, because of this focus on reality TV, because of this feeling, this culture of being afraid of people that are not like you, for not being accepting of others, for thinking of yourself as being separate and not part of a collective whole, regardless of skin color, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of the way you think, and that each person is an individual, and that we are not a community, that we are not a people, one people in this country? Would you believe that whoever's promoting that is playing an April Fool's joke on you and me? Why would we allow that to happen? Why would we allow for hate to be the reason that moves us in a specific direction? Why would we allow for hate to provide the opportunity to separate us? Why would we allow for an opportunity to use hate as a dividing line between who we are as a people, who we want to be and aspire to be, who we would want for our children to grow up being? And in doing so, and this is the April Fool part, in doing so, people that are hating end up cutting off their own nose to spite their face. So when we talk about the Affordable Health Care Act, there are a number of people that are benefiting from that, but when you say that it's Obamacare, oh, they don't want it. So if that law had gone through and it was repealed, those people that didn't want it because it was Obamacare would have ended up losing their health care, not knowing that it was the same thing, the same actual bill that was helping them. So don't allow yourself to be the biggest April Fool. Don't focus on hate, focus on inclusion and love for one another. Madam Toastmaster.
Wow, thank you very, very much. Points well taken. Points well taken. Thank you, Kevin. I thought the speeches went very, very well today. And now we're going into the evaluations and then table topic responders. Please have your questions ready. Lucy Kahn, you're getting double duty with my speeches today. Would you please come up and evaluate my speech just in the nick of time? And folks, do yourselves a favor because it's dark in the back. Start coming up. You know the evaluation is only 1.5 minutes, so second person, please start moving through. Thank you, Lucy.
Hi. Good morning, fellow Toastmaster,
Good morning.
guests, viewing audience, and especially Fran. Fran, I like your title, Just in the Nick of Time. And you talk about the figurine that you were able to do it 3 days before the big fire. And I like your story about how you went in, how you get the figurine, and I like your figurine. It's really nice.
You can't have them.
And you really had it clearly visible to everybody. And it's just like that your speech is good, and I have nothing to tell you about it because you are very good in doing storytelling and making sure that the visual is there. So I think you did a good job in making this getting comfortable with visual aid. So I hope that to hear more about your speech, and hopefully it will be done. And I like to make sure that to hear more about your story of your life. Thank you.
I have a lot of things in my china closet. Thank you very much, Lucy. And our third speaker was Sue Brooks, and Sue's evaluator is Alex Voiland, our Area 63 director. I like to tell people you're the area just before my area of 64 here. Welcome, Alex.
Welcome. Welcome, citizens of Staten Island, guests, fellow Toastmasters, friend, Hayoki. The speech that I'm evaluating right now would have been or should have been about a two-way Toastmasters meeting, backward and forward. And probably it would be a nice speech if we would do it in reverse. You start the speech from the end and go all the way to the beginning. But since today is April Fool's Day, we're not going to evaluate that speech. What we're evaluating is Sue, real backwards Toastmasters meeting. Honestly, I heard about it, never witnessed one. So when you expressed your ambivalence, when you expressed your face expressed the meeting, you were scared. Your body gestures showed us the fear of what to expect. And when the evaluation of your future speech came up, that was a very unusual situation because the evaluator would have given the two-way evaluation. It should have been in reverse. And yet you came up with all the good stuff, and you came up with the real explanation of what should we expect, and you gave us a true meaning of what the Advanced Toastmasters Club is. So that is what we're looking for in the advanced speech, and I enjoyed your speech fully, waiting for the next speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Very nice. Yes, we'll have to try that one of these days. It's a strange kind of a feeling. And now Kevin's speech will be evaluated by our boss, Alex, right? Your boss at home as well as in the Toastmasters world, but my boss as far as she's my division director, Amelia Voiland. And the title again was The Biggest Fool Ever. Welcome, Amelia. I like having you come over on the show. I'm sorry the bridge fare is so high, but get one of those little
That's
drones
okay.
to fly you and Alex
That's
over.
okay.
That should work. Amelia,
We're
roll
happy
on.
to be here. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and especially Kevin. Kevin did a speech today, the biggest fool ever. And since it's April 1st, Fool's Day, this was a very appropriate name for this speech. Kevin's speech was speech number 2 in CC manual, Organize Your Speech. And when you organize your speech, the most important thing is to have a very catchy opening, nice body to the speech, and a conclusion. And I enjoyed how Kevin opened the speech. He made a joke about Fool's Day, April Fool's Day, and he included Fran in it. And he said, it's okay, Fran, I don't mean you, which I enjoyed it. His body of the speech was very interesting and political, where Kevin talked about how everybody can be fooled just by giving a different name to a situation. People don't really realize what it is, and everybody can get fooled by that. And the ending and the conclusion that Kevin drew us all close together, he said, don't allow anything to fool you. Just don't allow the name to fool you. Focus on inclusion. Focus on love. Don't focus on hate. And I really enjoyed that. And the ending, the conclusion of the speech, really what draws the speech together. And thank you, Kevin, for that speech. I will be thinking about it a whole day today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amelia. All right, now I see our first responder is over there, Paul Paradise. All right, Paul,
Thank you very much.
you have an interesting question for our guest speaker today?
Well, first, I'd like to say that today is my brother's birthday.
Well, happy birthday.
And unfortunately, I wish he could have been here because I think he would have very much enjoyed today's program.
Well, you can show him the DVD.
I will. I certainly will because he lives in Switzerland, so I'll have to send it to him.
Well, he can fly here.
Which he could. Well, first, Jerry, I'd like to say I enjoyed your presentation very, very much, and I thought that your colors and are wonderful. I did have many questions, but first, I realized that the Heyoka, it's a path, it's a way of life.
Right.
And I couldn't help but wondering, because your research and your presentation was so wonderful, that did you in fact follow this path at any point in your life? Is this something too that just comes to you, or is this a path that you choose?
The path doesn't choose, the path you choose is not in the exact way as someone saying, I am going to be this way. It's something that comes to you naturally through the Spirit. It happened through a time of great despair in my life where I was just trying to internalize everything. And I realized that that's not a way for a person to live. They have to be able to face their fears and their realities head on. And sometimes through humor, that's the best way to do it. So I began to just not make light of what was going on with me, but try to accept it in a softer form. So that way I was able to become more emboldened and more encouraged to do better and try to fix my flaws. So in that way, it did choose me, because at my most weakest down point was when that epiphany, if for lack of a better word, came to me as to how I have to enact my ways.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Jerry.
Thank you, Paul. Isaac, I know you've got a question. You always have a question.
I always have a question. I'm not going to repeat what Paul already said because we all enjoyed the presentation. It's amazing, unusual. My question was, is there some kind of a age or gender restriction that you can be a clown, or it comes to anybody at any time in their lives and people just become or
Right.
do.
There is no, like I said, learning rules by not having rules. When a person gets that calling, it doesn't matter what age they are, what gender they are. They bring it division to the people, and the people acknowledge and recognize it as so, and then they begin to enact and make part of their attitude, their way of being, this way of being. And there are being senior heyokas that are there. They sometimes take an apprentice under their wing and kind of guide them in the ways of the society as well. But no, it's a calling that comes to you, kind of like the priesthood to many people. It's something that the Spirit says, this is going to be your way of being. You're going to be a teacher, and in the contrary fashion. And this is how you have to live your life. And it doesn't matter what age. It could come when they're very young, it could come when they're old. It doesn't matter.
Thank you.
That was one thing I was going to ask you about the age. Yeah. All right, now Joe Marizio.
Yes, very interesting. Hello, audience of all types. I thought about the yin and the yang
Right.
when you presented your idea, and I said, wow, that's interesting. I wondered if, like in some cultures, they stir the pot only to the right and they never go counterclockwise. And then you mentioned the horses and how they get on backwards, and people that dance go counterclockwise
Right.
and the other ones go clockwise. I'm wondering, though, if there's anything as far as cooking, something serious instead of, well, dancing could be serious too, but something like cooking like we have, like some countries will not allow the microwave, and it's not because the microwave keeps going counterclockwise, it's because it's radiation. But I
Right.
was wondering about that in your own culture. Thank
As
you.
far as taboos, nothing really major. The one thing that's very sacred to the Heyoka societies, and it can be a little, I don't know, to some people very taboo, but because they are Heyoka, nothing is taboo to them. The kettle ceremony, which I mentioned, where they would dip into the pot to grab a piece of food to eat, generally that pot was full of dog meat. And it was, dog meat was considered very sacred. And kettle societies and clown societies would do that in ceremony only. They wouldn't eat it every day. It was something that was done during ceremony. So dog was, like I said, dog meat considered very sacred to many Plains peoples. So in the contrary sense, you're supposed to treat it in a sacred manner, whereas they were allowed to plunge their hands right in and just grab it and eat. As far as anything else, nothing was taboo to them. They did anything they wanted. They were allowed to question the norm and act as abnormally as possible. That way they teach you how to live and balance your existence.
I hope you come back to our show. You're very educational. Thank you.
She took part of my question away, too. And now we have Irene Rosado. Irene, you have a good question here?
Actually, I had several, but they were asked before me, being
I
the
know,
last
two of mine have been
speaker.
taken.
So one of the questions that I have is, do you speak the language of all the tribes? Do you communicate in one language, or is that something that you have to learn? Like
Well,
we learned-
considering there are several hundred tribes and nations across the country, it's very difficult to do. A lot of the times when other languages are spoken, like outside of my language, is during the ceremony of the respected tribe. Like if we do in Lakota ceremony, the prayers and the songs are done in Lakota, in Cheyenne, in Apache, so on and so forth. Really the only time you're allowed or you do that. Otherwise, we just communicate in the common language, in the common tongue. When we're in ceremony, though, it all changes. Depending on what nation the ceremony has influenced is the language that is used. Many times, mostly in prayer. Like, I don't speak fluent Lakota, but I can pray in Lakota, and I can sing in Lakota, and I can do the same in Cheyenne as well, and many other ceremonies that are influenced by other tribes.
Interesting. My second question, since you are a clown and you're a trickster, what type of tricks do you play on the children?
With the children, it has to be more of a, how would you call it, more of a fear, because in that sense, you're teaching them to behave. So a lot of the times it was, scaring them in the normal, typical manner that most people would scare a child. The entire Oogie Boogie concept works for us as well. And to letting them know that if you don't behave, I'm going to come back and I'm going to eat you. I'm going to take you away and your parents will never see you again. So you have to behave and be a good kid. Many times it was, of course, done humorously with the wicked laughter and things like that. And many times the children love the clown, but another way, they fear them as well. They have to. It's part of
Yeah.
the way.
Well, thank you so very much. I enjoyed your speech completely. Thank you. Hope to see you
Thank you,
again.
Irene. Now, let me get a question. The horse riding backwards, is that the horse, the rider, making the horse walk backwards, or is he sitting backwards
It was
on
the
the
rider
saddle?
sitting backwards in the saddle.
Thank you. That was one thing I figured.
Pitching
Also,
headlong. And many times, if a warrior rode a horse backwards into battle, he was considered either very brave or very insane. But that was both the traits were very well looked upon. So
Okay. All right. Another thing, how are your powers taken away?
they're not.
And we're watching the
it's-
time very closely. We just have about
They're not taken away. It's something that once you get, it's forever. You
really?
have to live that life way, and consider that as part of your way until the day they bury you. It's
Now, the bald eagle's son, what was his name again?
Katori.
Katori. He's growing up to be a good man. He seemed
Yes.
very nice when he was here about a year ago. What do you do when a boy gets strayed by other outside influences in school? And just keep watching the clock over there. We have about 57 seconds.
Well,
And talk to the camera.
in the same way that you teach other boys. Katori did go through a manhood ceremony, so he knows the responsibilities of a man. It's all a matter of kind reminder, as well as enacting more responsibility on them so that they know that sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. You have to keep that balance. You can't make it totally easy, and you can't make it totally hard for a young man. You have to let him know that the responsibilities can be like a roller coaster, like your emotions, up and down, and you have to be able to move with it as well and go with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Jerry. And I know we're going to have you back because you're going to join our club and you're going to join our crew. And so we'll see what happens.
Wonderful.
And I'm very glad that we've had you on a couple of times. Now you're part of our family. And I look forward to you coming back again real soon.
All right. Well,
and
thank you.
folks, we're going to have another meeting after a short break. Hope everyone will come back. Our show will appear for the next 2 Saturdays, Channel 34 on Time Warner and Fios. Let's see, I know we stay here until they finish off. This was very, very educational.